In this video, I'll discuss a retirement planning scenario for a 45-year-old and a 43-year-old couple with 2 teenage children and a house mortgage. The line chart you see models the income, investments, and expenses the couple expects to have between the ages of 45 and 65, roughly. So why would someone want to model their finances when they could guesstimate a reasonable expenditure that will cover their bills well into the future? It's a little bit like asking, why do famous actors go broke? Even if you have no unexpected future expenses, it's not simple to forecast expenditures versus investment growth over time. So to simplify modeling and estimating future finances, I'm using a iOS retirement estimator app that you can download for free from the Apple App Store and play around with to do your own modeling and future estimates. The model accounts for transfers between income, investments, and expenses, and so you see the couple's investments increase and decrease over time. The light cyan color line is spouse one's 401k, so he starts out with $400,000, and this is in 2019. And spouse 2 401k, that's the red line, starts out at $300,000. So by the time spouse 1 is 45, this is how much they have in their savings account. And they have a savings of $50,000 here. So you see that spouse 1, they plan on retiring at the age of 55 when spouse 1 is 55. So you'll see that their income that they currently make continues for 10 years, and then that income stops. And spouse 1 makes $130,000 starting out, and spouse 2 makes $104,000. The blue line represents the couple's expenses, and so their yearly expenses that they've estimated or calculated is $75,000 roughly to 2020. And then you'll see the living expenses increase with inflation at a 3% rate over time. Now, the purple line is their house mortgage, which will end when spouse 1 is 59 or so. And it's a steady $30,000 a year that they have to pay. And then they have included their kids' college expenses at about $50,000 a year. And that's over the course of 6 years. So transfers have all been set up between these so that so that this model will depict the flow and how much their investments increase and decrease. If we look at all the transfers that are set up, then you'll see that they've set up modeled all kinds of transfers here. And they're prioritized so that they take from their income before they start taking from their 401k and things like that. So what we see in the graph is from 45 to 65 is that, those are the options. We see that their spouse 1, after their income ends down here, then spouse 1 is using his retirement 401k to start paying the bills. So you start seeing his 401k dropping. And you also see that spouse 2, for a period of time, also has to start using their 401k for a little bit to pay for some things. This is right when the savings account ends. You start seeing the 401ks start dropping. And so they look like their, spouse 1's 401k is dropping at the age of 65, and spouse 2's 401k looks like it's doing pretty good. It's increased to $1.5 million. So at this point you would think $2 million between the 401ks at 65 years old, and they have retirement income that hasn't even kicked in, so they should be doing pretty well. So if we go back, we can look at how they would do from 45 to 90. And I'll have a configuration set up for 45 to 90, and I'll look at the graph. And yes, they're doing really well. Of course, they pay for their bills out of spouse 1's 401k first, so spouse 1 401k will run out completely before starting to take out a spouse 2's 401k. And so you see a little dip in the curve here where spouse 2 is starting to pay, but by this point their 401k is exceeding their cost of living. Oh, another thing they did is they figure they'll downsize and decrease their cost of living once they get to be 65. So you see the cost of living here drop from $290,000 from $130,000 roughly, and then you see it increasing from there. This is where you see the retirement income kicking in here, and so they look like they're doing really well. If let's suppose I want to model, for example, how much could they spend at the age of 65, for example, in order for their 401k to come down. So I'll play around with that retirement expenditure budget, and I'll come back and I'll look at my expense, and I'm going to look at my yearly living expense after 65, and I'm going to just increase this to $120,000. And so they still have plenty even at $120,000. You can see that they're doing pretty good. So let me go back and update that again. And I'll make this, let's just make it something much bigger, 200,000. And we'll go back and look at the graph again. And now it starts to drop down, so they know that 200,000 according to this model and their current estimates wouldn't be enough to get to 90. And so if, can play around with these numbers until they see an expense that works out about right. So I'll change this to 150,000 and look at the graph again. And yeah, and that comes out to be just about right for being 90 years old and having enough money to pay the bills for that length of time. So they're doing pretty good. They could actually, after the age of 65, potentially increase their expenditures according to these projections, these financial models that they've set up for their personal finances. If you would like to enter data for yourself and you want to know how to use this particular application, this is a retirement estimator application in the iOS App Store. You can download it for free and try it out. If you want to learn how to use it, you can watch the videos on planning for retirement at 65 and planning for retirement at 55 to understand how to do it. But this scenario is just for kind of things you can do for 45 and over. Also, I can to estimate data, I can go look at what the yearly expenses, let's say this couple estimated. And so their yearly expenses they've calculated their yearly expenses out like this. So you see it's auto fuel, auto insurance. They entered all that information out. Then they went over and they looked at their total expense costs. And it's all of these expenses are added up, and they come up with this expense over here at 68,000. Roughly I put 75,000 to be more conservative for their yearly expenses in the actual report. You can download the data sets that could be imported for this video, and I'll have a link at the bottom of the video that you can use to go get those if you want to try them out for yourself. All right, that's it for this video.